What's up everybody and welcome back to the workshop. Now, we are going to get into a really cool project that I'm super excited about. I'm going to be making a custom leather belt with accompanying pouches for skeet and trap shooting. Now for the belt, I'm going to try and forge the belt buckle out of a mosaic Damascus pattern. So this will be my first attempt at a mosaic pattern, so I'm really excited about that. And I'm also really excited to get to play around with the leather. I like working with it and it's very fun. It's pretty soothing too. But with all that, thank you guys so much for joining me. Let's go get into it. Now for the pouches, I'm going to make two different types of pouches. One will be a short pouch. It'll be a 5 by 4.5 by 3. That'll fit a box of 12 gauge shells perfectly. And then I'm going to make two side pouches that are a little bit longer. They're going to be an 8 by 4 by 6.5. Those will go on the sides of the hips. This one will go in the back. I think that'll make out for plenty of shell space for spent shells and for live rounds. I think it's going to turn out really nice. Now, for the sides of the pouches, we're going to be using this 4 to 5 ounce leather, and I did go ahead and shave off a little on the edge just so I knew I would have a straight edge. So we can go ahead and start laying out our gussets, and we'll make the straps out of this 4 to 5 as well. For the main bodies, we're going to be making that out of an 8 to 9 ounce. It's going to be a little bit thicker, but for now we can go ahead and get these laid out. To lay out the gussets, I'm just going to be using a red pen on the back of the leather. Since we're making two of the larger pouches, we're going to need 4 gussets, so I'm just going to repeat this process 3 more times, and then we'll scribe our smaller gussets and our straps. With all of our patterns drawn onto the leather, we can go ahead and start cutting them out. I'm going to be using a little square to make sure all my cuts are straight and square. That is very important.
Really quick, I want to shout out Weaver Leather Supply. That is where I bought the 8 to 9 ounce and 4 to 5 ounce leather. They have a large assortment of leatherworking products, so go check them out. That is also where I got the measurements for the small pouch. I then took those measurements and switched them up a bit to make the larger pouches.
So we're now going to jump over and get our main bodies cut out. Like I said, we'll be using this 8 to 9 ounce for the main bodies. So we'll get them drawn on here and cut out. Again, we're making 2 of these large ones. So we're going to draw 2 of these on here and then 1 small one. With all of the gussets now cut out and everything is cut, we're going to add in some little finger grabs into the top of our gussets. We're going to use this punch, and we're just going to come up here, line it up with the center as close as possible, and go ahead and drop that in. So now we're going to just repeat this process with all of the gussets, and we'll go on from there. So with all of these now punched out, we can go ahead and punch the ends of our straps, get those nice and rounded out. And then I did measure our holes for our Chicago screws that we're going to be using to connect the straps to the base, so we can punch those holes as well. Now with all the holes punched and everything rounded off, we can go ahead and start grooving and edging the edges of the leather. So we have the groover set to 1/8 of an inch. So we're going to run a nice groove around all of the straps and all of the main body. Alright, with all the grooves cut in, we can now start to edge the leather. For the 8 to 9 ounce, I'm going to be using a number 5 edger, and for the 4 to 5 ounce, I'm going to be using a number 3. Now we can move on to our straps. Okay, so with the straps and the main bodies done, we can now come over here and groove and edge bevel our gussets. Same process as before. Now that they all have been grooved, we're back with the number 3 edger. So with them being edge beveled, now that that's finished, we can go ahead and start to punch our holes for our stitching. But before that, we're going to find our center lines on each one of these gusset pieces. That'll come in handy later on down the road, and I'll explain that when the time comes. But we're going to find our center and get those marked out. 1/2 of 4 1/16 is 2 1/32. 4 1/16, 2 1/32. 4 1/16, 2 1/32. Imagine that. And the final one, 4 1/16, 2 1/32. Now the little ones, they're sitting at 3 inches, so 1 1/2 and 1 1/2. Perfect. So we have our hole punch set here. I believe they are 6 millimeters. They're just round holes. We have the 6, the 4, and the 2. Now what we're going to do is on that center line, we're going to straddle the first and the second tine. So then we can come in with the 2 tine, punch right there. That'll leave us perfect amount of space on the end there, and then we can come over here and just hit it with a straight 6 tine. So let's do that. Now you want to make sure the punches go all the way through the leather. That's just going to make it easier on us when we go to stitch it. Look at that. So now we'll do that with the other one. And just like that, those 2 bottoms are done. Now for the longer gussets, we're going to essentially do the same process. We're going to straddle that center mark, and then we'll come in with the 4, and that'll punch very nicely. And then same thing over here, we'll just connect those holes. We'll come back with the 4. We'll have to straddle 2 pre-punched holes, but that'll also line up very nicely. That guy doesn't want to stay in there. Alright, so we'll repeat that process for these 3 gussets. Now, for punching the sides, we're going to line up this last tine right on the edge of that. That guy doesn't want to stay in there. I wonder why that's loose. But anywho, so we're going to line up that last tine right up against that leather. We'll do that for both sides just to ensure that all the holes will fall in the exact same spot. So we'll go ahead and knock that in. And we'll run the stitch line down. I'll take our 4 and we'll straddle 2 holes again. Knock that in. And we have a pretty good stitch line running up the sides. So now we'll repeat that process. And there you have it. So we'll go ahead and repeat that on this other small gusset. Now for the longer ones, essentially we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to line that up right on the edge and send her home. And that makes a nice stitch line down that side. So we'll go ahead and repeat that for all 4 of these ones. Moving over to the main body, we went ahead and we found our center of the bottom of the pouch. So we're just going to repeat the process for the bottom row of stitch holes here. We're going to straddle that center punch right there, knock that in, move over, do a full 6. That guy is no good. And again, come back with our 2 and first time last hole. And so now our holes should line up pretty perfectly with the bottom holes on the gusset, and they do. So that's great news. Now, coming up for the side holes, it's going to get a little bit more complicated, but we can make it real easy by taking our gusset and lining it up with the top of our main body. Seeing where those holes line up, just come straight across. We'll mark them first to make sure those line up pretty good, so we can go ahead and send that through. And we'll work our way down the side. I'm going to double check. Those look like they're lining up very well. So we'll keep going. Goes out, double check. Alright, so now we can take our two-prong punch, first time, last hole, and send that through. Those line up really good, so we'll just repeat that process for these sides. And there we have it. All holes have been punched. We can double check that they line up. Those line up real nice. Those line up good. And those line up good. So now we know that all of our holes line up with the main body. Now it's on to our bigger pouches, our larger main bodies, but it'll be the same process. Find the center mark and repeat the same hole punches that we have on our bottom gusset, and then line up the side holes. So now with all of the holes punched through our gussets and our main bodies, everything's lining up really nice, looks really good. Now, before we can stitch it, we're going to be adding in some really cool custom detail. The first one is going to be this skeleton shooting a sporting clay. Now up here, I'm going to stamp Gunslinger into it, so I'll be using the alphabet stamps. And then down here, I'm going to carve this into the leather, do some really cool stuff with that. Now on the other main body, we're going to be using this portrait of their dog they sent me over. That's going to look really good. I'm really excited to try that out. So with all that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started on adding in those details. Now I did tape the leather down to this block, and then I taped our piece of tracer paper over top of that, so that way we can lift up and check our progress as we go. Now we're going to make sure the leather is nice and wet, so we get a nice line transferred on there. We're going to take this little tool here and just go over everything, make sure it looks real nice. So there is the pattern transferred on to the leather. Now I did switch up the pull a little bit. I spaced out the letters just so when I groove those in, they don't all get messed up. I think that'll look really nice with some more spacing. And then I went and refined the barrel because I accidentally messed that one up just a wee bit, so I went in with a red pen and got that nice and squared off. But now we're going to go in with the finger groover and cut in all of our lines. Alright, so now that everything has been cut in, we can go back with different types of taps and punches and get our detail in there. Now this is where everything starts to really pop. The stamps give it a nice 3D kind of dimension. It'll look really cool when we're finished. It is very time consuming and very tedious, so you want to take your time and make sure you're going over the lines, and yeah, just take your time, make sure it looks good. You can really see how that little bit really brings to life that clay pigeon explosion. We will be texturing the center of those to really make it pop. Then we'll go ahead and texture the gunman and then go over the pole. Now here it is with all the stamping done. You can see how it added a really neat depth to the image, a nice cool little 3D kind of thing. So now we're going to stamp in Gunslinger up in the top. Alright, this pouch the detailing is now done, so we can move on to our other pouch where we will be putting, can't really see it, see-through paper, but it is the portrait of your dog. This one I'm a little nervous about, a lot of detail in this one, but we can go ahead and get started on transferring this pattern onto our leather. So here is the face now transferred onto the leather. Just like before, we're going to come in with our swivel knife and cut in all those lines, and then add some details with varying stamps and whatnot. So let's get after it. Now all the tooling has been done. You guys can see, like I said before, it gives it a real nice 3D kind of look to it. Looks a little more three-dimensional, gives it some more character. So with the two main bodies now done, we can go ahead and start getting on our leather dye, adding that on here, and then put some antiquing over it, and that'll make it look real nice. So we'll go ahead and start that process. For the staining, I'm going to be using a black and a light tan. The black is going to be for all of this down here, and then the outline of our little illustration, and then we'll go back in with a light tan over top of everything that's raised. After that, we can take some antiquing and rub it in there, and that'll get all those little fine details, and it'll really make everything pop. Set that to the side, and we can come in gussets and get those stained black as well. Just look at how fast that leather soaks up all that dye. So we're just going to repeat that process for the rest of the main bodies and all of the gussets. Get them nice and black, but leaving the outline for our designs to be a light tan. We have it dyed light tan and black. We're going to go in with some antiquing to really darken up those low spots on our design there. So here are the images after the dye and antiquing has dried. Everything turned out really nice. I'm very excited about that. On this gusset, I did add some other details. I stamped in reload and stitched on 2 little holders for 2 shotgun shells. Now all we have left to do is to burnish these top edges that won't get stitched, and then do a whole bunch of hand stitching. Now we can go ahead and start stitching our gusset to the main body. We're going to be working on the bottom part of our gusset and the bottom part that will be the pouch. So we're going to line those up and then go ahead and start stitching. Now I'm going to be using these pins to help secure the gusset to the main body and make sure that all of our stitch holes stay lined up. So that just threads in there like that, and then that clips on the back like so. And now we can go ahead and start running in our stitch pattern. So you pull the left one through, and then the right one, and I like to wrap 3 times in the beginning, and then as I go further down the piece, I'll only wrap once, and just like that. Again, left needle through, find our second hole. Now you hold the right needle behind the left needle, pull the left needle through, make sure there's a nice clearing, right needle through, and then just one wrap and pull through. That is how I like to do my stitching. That's how I've done it for quite some time now. If you guys have any recommendations on different ways to stitch leather, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you guys. But we're just going to keep repeating that process. So now that we're about 2 stitches away, I'm going to go ahead and take this pin out. Everything should hold with the prior stitching, so we'll go ahead and finish it off. So now that we are at our last hole, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this front stitch through the main body, but just the main body, and then I'm going to pull this back needle through the gusset and only the gusset. Got a little tangled up. That's alright. Alright, and now what I'm going to do is make a nice little square knot in there, so that'll hide the end of the lacing. Usually I would burn off the lace on the outside, but since both of these edges will be visible, we're going to do a square knot that's hidden underneath the two pieces. So we'll take it right over left, cinch that down, and then left over right. And that'll give us a nice strong square knot. And that'll hold those two seams together perfectly. Now we can take our knife and very carefully we're going to cut these threads. Don't want to scratch up or nick any of our pieces. And we'll just go ahead and tuck those down below and get them out of our way. So you guys can see how it stitches in there, and then we just tucked our lacing down back behind that little knob. There will be a corner here, so you won't be able to see those. Now with this gusset bottom attached, we can work on our second gusset, getting that stitched in there, and then we'll be able to fold it and stitch it kind of like that. It's going to look really cool. I'm very excited with the progress, but I'm going to go ahead and stitch that off camera. It's just going to be the same process as this one down here. We have our other gusset stitched on to the bottom, so now we can start working on getting the sides stitched up. Now the way we're going to do that is we're going to first start our thread through this first hole right here, and then making sure we start in that hole so that everything lines up. Now we can take our little thread pin and we're going to go ahead and twist that and get these two sides stuck together just to ensure everything will line up as we proceed to stitch. So now we can go ahead and start. Alright, now that we're approaching the top, we can go ahead and remove our little pin. All the holes should be right where they need to be. And now that I'm approaching the last hole, we're going to do a 3 wrap around this needle coming back through, just to make sure that it stays extra tight. 1, 2, 3. Pull that through. And then again, so we're going to take our front needle and just stick it through the main body and pull that out. And then we're going to take the side, pull it through the gusset, pull that through, make sure that's nice and tight. So now with the needles pulled through, we can go ahead and do a square knot. Again, right over left, and cinch that down, and left over right, and cinch that down. And that will create a nice little knot up at the top. We'll go ahead and cut that and tuck it away down in that seam. So here you can see our little corner. That's essentially the process, so now we just have to repeat it for those 3 sides, and we will come back when that's done. Alright, and there we have our pouch. It is all sewn together. Now I'm going to massage these corners a little bit. They're not super clean, so I'm going to do a little massage therapy on them, work those flat, and then we'll put some token oil on and burnish those edges. So now that the edges are completely burnished and nice and cleaned up, I went ahead and stamped my maker's mark in there, D squared. But this is pretty much done. So now with a little bit of magic, we will have our other 2 pouches right here and complete. And just like that, they're done. Now I did go ahead and add in our straps with the Chicago screws. Put a little glue in the female ends just to keep the screws from going loose during usage or anything like that. But I only added just a tiny little bit. So if you want to break them off and change out the straps or anything like that, it should break out pretty easily. But here are our final products. I think they turned out absolutely awesome. It was a super fun build. Got to work with lots of leather. Definitely learned a lot of fun little learning curves and whatnot, but that is a complete set. So with all that, it takes us to the end of today's episode. Those pouches were a lot of fun to make. Very excited with how they turned out. I can't wait to give them to my client. I think they're going to absolutely love them. I know this was all leather in today's episode, but don't fret. We'll be getting into some crazy Damascus here in the upcoming part 2. With that being said, in part 2, we will be working on our Damascus belt buckle and getting the belt finished. That's going to be a whole other can of worms that I can't wait to crack open and get into. I'm a little nervous. Like I said earlier, it's my first attempt at a mosaic Damascus, and we'll get into that in the next episode. But thank you guys so much for following along. Don't forget to like and subscribe. That really helps me out. And I will see you guys in the next one.